Hi, my name is Veronica Mellado de la Cruz, and I have applied an interest in educational research to the area of early literacy assessment. But more specifically, my experience in research is at the intersection of language learning and assessment for the prevention and intervention of reading difficulties. But that is a mouthful. So let me explain a little bit more about the work itself and what I find so interesting about it. Once when I was a preschooler, I remember one day in particular, I was learning about colors. And what makes that day stand out in my mind, however, is that I was confused by something my big teacher said. And I transferred skills and that kind of got in the way. So Mrs. Olson was very tall and I was very small. So I called her my big teacher. So I kept listening to my big teacher explain about yellow. And she could tell I was puzzling. And for a while, my big teacher repeated and tried to explain about yellow, but there was definitely a breakdown in our communication for a while. It wasn't until a parent picked me up later that day we figured out exactly what went wrong for us. I had heard what I was being taught in English and tried to understand it by transferring, though inaccurately in this case, what I knew in Spanish. You see, hielo is the word for ice in Spanish, like ice cube. So my cross-linguistic transfer in this case did not help the situation because the same sounding word didn't have the same meaning in English. As it turns out, researchers have examined cross-linguistic transfer of reading skills. So we know some about that. There are nuances in researching assessment among bilingual students in particular, and cross-linguistic transfer is one of those elements that just intrigues me. And anyway, I like that challenge and that nuance. So in truth, the applied extensions from this work intrigue teachers as well. Without fail, when I share an interest in the assessment, data-driven decisions, and intervention among bilingual students, the overwhelming initial response is, oh, that's really interesting. You know, I have a student and I really wonder how much is language learning and how much is, difficulties about reading. That's a super common response or something along those lines. But this could be a bilingual educator with familiarity with the native language who's been teaching lots of students learning languages and been teaching reading to them, who's having a hard time teasing it apart, knowing what to do in intervention time, knowing whether to trust the data. Similar concerns in a completely different situation might happen. So a teacher who teaches where ESL programs are what is typically used whenever there's a student who's learning English, and is simply a teacher who's never taught a student whose home language is Urdu, but who has the students in her class for half the day. So this is why I find this work so intriguing. The field of bilingual research and cross-linguistic transfer is broad. Characteristics such as one test are administered in the student's early literacy career, the language of instruction, English language proficiency, type of reading skill you're testing. All of these things can moderate or change the relation between skills in one language and the acquisition of skills in another. There's just so much to consider. So it's been intriguing finding patterns in our own research that are consistent with various findings across special and bilingual education research.